Good evening and welcome to JJ Wins in Holiday City, a special Tuesday night edition of Sports Weekly driven by Terry Hendricks Ford. And as we said here at JJ Wins as part of their, it's a Tuesday night. We have probably some people that are confused. They just came out to dinner on a Taco Tuesday and we got a radio show going on when normally it's a Wednesday show. But our guest tonight, we wanted to accommodate his schedule. He's got a big weekend coming up and about ready to head out to Arizona shortly. We'll tell you who that guest is if you don't already know in just a moment. We want to let everybody know our sponsors tonight, along with Terry Hendricks Ford and JJ Wins, are the Bryan Parks and Rec Department, Fackler Monument Company, the main stops of Northwest Ohio, Amerimaid Realty, Elianne's Boutique and the Maddox Men's Emporium, Cornerstone Flooring, Stambaugh Jewelers, and Andres O'Neill Insurance Agency. And we are happy to be joined by, from the Cleveland Guardians Radio Network, Jim Rosenhaus. Jim, how are you this evening?
Thank you. What happens at the Maddox Men's Emporium?
So that is it's a little of everything. You get clothing, you can get some alcohol, for men to shop, that's a pretty good draw, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, men on one side, women on the other side for LEN. So that's where we're at. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. It's great to be back. We were talking earlier. It's been a little while since we've been able to go out and talk baseball to get ready for the season, but it's great to be back. I think we might have a normal season this year with no pandemic, no COVID restrictions, no lockout like we had last year. So we're really looking forward to a big season.
Yeah, and that's why we knew you weren't here last year, because there was nothing to talk about. The lockout had happened, or was getting ready to happen. I forget, what was the timing? Had it happened yet?
They were in the lockout. They were in deep, and it didn't look good, and we weren't even sure if there would be a season last year, and thank goodness there was, because it turned out to be a great season.
What a season. Let's talk about that. That's a great place to start, because at this point in time last year, if there was baseball, you'd probably be hard-pressed to find even the most diehard Cleveland fan that thought it was going to go as well as it did. Talk a little bit about, from your perspective on the inside, the Guardians' year in 2022.
Andy, to your point, I think spring training is always a time where you're excited. No matter what your team looks like on paper, you think they have a chance. But, man, the Guardians really didn't do a whole lot last offseason to augment the roster with any type of veterans or free agents. And it was going to be a really, really young team. In fact, even Terry Francona and Chris Antonetti met with the media midway through spring training, and they said, look, here's what we're doing. This is the team that we're going with. It's going to be super young. We need to find out about a lot of guys who might not even be on the roster yet, who are in the minor leagues. Eventually, we're going to find out about them, which is usually secret code for, from our perspective, oh boy, it's going to be a long year. They never look at it that way, no matter how young the team is or what you think it is. Tito, Chris, the front office, they're playing to win. Now, it may be a little bit harder to try and win with a younger club, and it turns out it worked out great. But, boy, in spring training, you just didn't know.
Yeah, and you mentioned the youth, and that certainly was a storyline. But I think from our perspective in kind of following Cleveland, that youth never really seemed too, smitten by the moment, so to speak. They were just kids, maybe didn't know any better. Is that a good way to say it?
I think to some extent, in some cases, that's probably true. 17 players made their major league debut last year, and that's the most of any playoff team that's in history. The most amount of first-year players making their debut for a team that made the postseason. I think a credit to the other veterans on the team and also the coaching staff and Tito. When these guys came up, it wasn't, okay, let's see if you fit into the major leagues and we'll give you some time to get comfortable. No, that when they showed up, they were told, you're here because we believe in you and you can help us win. And that makes a big difference when a player comes up and feels a part of it right away. And that was the prevailing theme for most of the players you talked to when they got there. They said, hey, we need to be a part of this thing or they're not going to be able to win ball games. And I think that's a real important mindset.
Jim, how important was that mix? I mean, it's one thing to have all that youth, and certainly that success probably doesn't happen if you don't have some of those veterans that you talked about. How important was the veteran mix?
Well, look, somebody's got to show young guys what it takes to win, and there's some players here who know what it takes to win. Jose Ramirez, Shane Bieber, just to name two. There's not a whole lot of them, but there was enough who had been to the postseason before where I think that was beneficial for the younger players coming in. And I know maybe you would say, well, this doesn't translate. Most of the players who came up played together in the minor leagues, and they won a title at AA, and they had very good teams at AAA too that were about winning, and that makes a difference. Sometimes it's not like that in the minor leagues, but they were fortunate to be part of teams where winning mattered. It was emphasized, doing some of the little things, being unselfish, which is really hard in the minor leagues. So I think when they got here, they knew what it took to win ball games, and you just hope that the talent was there to be able to do it.
And Terry Francona does such a great job of fostering that kind of environment anyways, doesn't he? Young team or not.
Absolutely. And again, there's an expectation. You're not here just to get your time in or to get used to the major leagues. You're up here to be a part of a winning ball club, because that's under him. They have the second most wins in the American League since he showed up in 2013. So, yeah, there's a big-time expectation. And even though they said, look, it's going to be a young team, we don't know, I think in the clubhouse they knew that they could be good if they played the game the right way, stayed away from some injuries, and maybe had a break or two along the way. And I think all those things happened.
And the first kid that you started to hear about, that first rookie, was Stephen Kwan coming on the scene. Tell us a little bit about him and coming on the scene the way he did.
Well, I had a chance to meet him the first week of spring training. It was his first major league camp. He had not been in major league spring training yet in his career. Usually someone who's trying to make the ball club has been at least at major league camp in spring training. Not so with him. And he said, I think I just want to use this month to kind of see how the veterans go about it. Maybe there's some things I can learn while I'm here. And it just sounded like he was expecting to get shipped out to AAA at some point in time in the spring. And son of a gun, at the end of the spring, they told him he made the team, and he was in the starting lineup on opening day and did nothing but hit for the first month of the season, and he was on his way.
Jim, was there a moment or a stretch, or when did it start to, I don't know if it's ball club or you guys in the booth and the media, when did you start thinking maybe this can be something that can be parlayed, and we're here and going to be around for the duration of this race?
Well, I think two things. Last day of spring training, Jose Ramirez had not signed his contract extension yet, and honestly, if they didn't sign him before the season started, it sounded like they were going to trade him, because they just didn't think they would be able to sign him, and they wanted to try and get something back while they could. And the team was ready to go to Kansas City. There was the last day of spring training, a split squad. Half the team was playing the Rockies in their spring training site. The other half was playing the Diamondbacks in Phoenix at the big league ballpark. That's where Jose was. And he told them, he said, look, I don't want to be traded. I want to stay here. How do we make this happen? Paul Dolan came in, Chris Antonetti was there, and Jose's agent was there, and they got it worked out. And that changed everything, because I think the players were kind of apprehensive about, is he going to be with us for the season? And it seemed like maybe he wasn't going to be. The Padres were rumored to have major interest, the Blue Jays, but they got the deal done. And when the team took off for Kansas City, there was just a different feel, a really good feeling about it. On the field, the night in Chicago in May, when they were trailing by a bunch, and Josh Naylor hit the grand slam to tie the game, and then a 3-run home run in extra innings to basically win the game. That was a game they had no business winning, and they started winning a lot of games like that, but that was the first one, and it kind of set things in motion.
Talking with Jim Rosenhaus from the Guardians Radio Network. I guess on a personal note, before we kind of move away from this, was this as fun a season as you've been around, either with the team or in broadcasting, period, because of, the expectations to begin the year, and then where it ended up going?
Definitely the most unexpected. 16 was still, that'll be hard to top. Just because of the way it ended. They played the Cubs in the World Series. That was a really good team, and you kind of knew they were good. And then they went out and proved it. But from an unexpected standpoint, absolutely this year was a ton of fun. And just seeing that many young kids having that major of an impact on the team, that was pretty neat. And it was a fun team to be around. They played great down the stretch, so every day meant something, and it really was a fun season.
So Stephen Kwan was the first rookie to come on the scene and kind of get national attention and notoriety. How long before you started to see those other guys that start to develop? Well, at that level,
I think Oscar Gonzalez was probably the next, and he came up and got off to a real nice start. Then he got hurt for a while, but then came back and was the same guy as he was before he got hurt. So I think those two really showed the way, and really I think after that the rest of these young guys were kind of complementary pieces, but really important pieces. But those two were the two that had really breakthrough seasons, and you can look at them now and say, they could be a major part of this club for a long time.
You mentioned injuries. I think that's also, I mean, how you weather, where's your depth, what's that look like, and how can you weather? Because as you know better than anybody, 162 games, that is a grind. So dealing with any injuries they had, I guess talk about how important it was that they were able to play through all of that and weather all that.
And there really weren't too many. Couple on the pitching staff. Aaron Savali was on and off the DL, I think 4 different times. And Zach Plezak had an injury for a while. But some days they would bring a kid up from the minor leagues and it didn't work out, and it was a bad game or whatever. But I think for the most part they were able to weather that storm, and it's important. And I think every year you leave spring training, you have these 25 guys, and you think, all right, everyone makes a big deal about the 25-man roster to start the season, but it's going to take 40 to 45 players to make the postseason, all contributing. So your AAA team is really an extension of your major league team, and I think we saw that last summer.
We're going to take our first break. By the way, if you are listening and have questions for Jim, Susie doesn't know it yet, but she's going to go around table to table and maybe grab questions if you have some. We can help maybe grab some pens, papers, and funnel up our way to get to Jim to have any questions that are Cleveland related answered. Actually, she kind of knew that she was probably going to do that. She can't just show up and just sit there and be a sales manager and sit on a high top all night, right? Huh? Well, she can do that extremely well. We'll take a break. We are underway in the Sports Weekly in segment number 1 with Jim Rosenhaus from the Guardians Radio Network. Stay with us, more to come.
It's Thirsty Thursday at all the main stops in Northwest Ohio. What does that mean? It means that every Thursday, all day long, you will get any size fountain drink or any size coffee for only 79 cents. All day long, every Thursday, any size fountain drink, any size coffee or cappuccino. Stop in to your main stop and see everything they have to offer every day. Main Stops, always there when you need us.
If you're looking for an amazing country home, then look no further. Misty King of Amerimaid Realty has one you won't want to miss. Located on Hicksville Edgerton Road, this beautiful home has room for everyone and incredible character throughout. Features include 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, hardwood floors, some exposed brick walls, a massive family room with fireplace, and more. It also offers 2 incredible outbuildings, one with a 10,000-pound lift and 220-volt socket for welders. You'll also find over 9 acres of land with a 2.5-acre stock pond that has a dock and gazebo. The list of amenities goes on, but if you want more details, you'll have to call Misty at 419-633-4997 or go to AmerimaidHomes.com. For over 42 years, Cornerstone's Flooring Outlet in Pioneer, Ohio has provided the tri-state area with the best service and lowest prices on the highest quality flooring options available. Luxurious carpet, durable sheet vinyl, easy to install, click or glue down, luxury vinyl, plank or tile, carpet tile, laminate, hardwood, ceramic or porcelain tile. Over 1,000 carpet and vinyl remnants at both locations. Hundreds of area rugs starting at only $29 each. The list goes on and on for both commercial and residential customers, all at prices to fit any budget. Need a professional installer to handle that flooring project? No problem. One of our crews will do all the work for you, including measuring and providing a down-to-the-penny price before we start. Doing it yourself to save money? No problem. We'll explain how. Visit Cornerstone's Flooring Outlet in Pioneer for all of your flooring needs. Open weekdays 9 to 6, Saturdays 9 to noon. noon.
It's time to play ball, my friend. She's waiting for your pitch. She's hoping it's a diamond so pretty, so sweet that she can't help but swing away with a big yes. Hi, I'm Scott Stanball from Stanball Jewelers in downtown Defiance. I want you to make the perfect pitch, so come see us. From a round diamond to a princess cut, from classic settings to the latest, we'll help you deliver when it counts. And when it crosses the plate and onto her finger, that's a home run, baby. So visit us at StanballJewelers.com or in downtown Defiance, because it's time to play ball, gentlemen.
Forget cars and purses. Thieves are after your identity. Recovering your stolen identity can cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The Central Mutual Insurance Company offers coverages that can help you recover from the devastating effects of identity theft. For your security, your protection, and your peace of mind, trust Central Mutual Insurance Company in Andrews, O'Neill & Lowe, with offices in Archbold, Bryan, and Wasion, or you can find us online at andrewsoneillandlowe.com.
I want to talk to you for the next 30 seconds about the place to go for your next vehicle. Terry Hendricks Ford on Stryker Street in Archbold. Whether it's a new vehicle for purchase, a lease vehicle, or perhaps a pre-owned vehicle, Terry Hendricks Ford on Stryker Street in Archbold is the place to turn. They also have this fantastic service department as well. Service after the sale. Terry Hendricks Ford, serving all of your vehicle needs in Northwest Ohio. Go to terryhendricksford.com.
Here's your updated B-Rock 100.9 forecast. Lows around 33 tonight under overcast skies. West winds 10 to 15 miles per hour. Cloudy skies tomorrow. Highs around 43. Scattered rain showers likely tomorrow night. Lows dip down to about 36. Overcast skies. Low 50s Thursday with a chance for scattered rain showers. Mid 30s cloudy Friday. I'm weatherology meteorologist Paul Trombley. Currently, it's 41 degrees.
Welcome back out here. Sports Weekly, driven by Terry Hendricks Ford, and here at J.J. Wynn's in Holiday City. Want to thank our extra Cleveland sponsors tonight: Amerimaid Realty, Ellie Ann's Boutique, and the Maddox Men's Emporium, Cornerstone Flooring, Stanbaugh Jewelers, and Andres O'Neill & Lowe. Next week, we're back to our normal night on a Wednesday night. We will talk boys basketball with Montpelier coach Nick Ramos and Stryker head coach Tyler Willis, and Antwerp girls coach Scott McMichael will join us next Wednesday night, the 25th, for the final night of January. So we do have a question, and by the way, if any, raise your hand. Susie will come make sure you get something to sign and get some questions by Jim answered, because I don't have all the questions in the world to ask you. Cleveland fans want to find out some info as well. This one comes from a person that's here. Will Tristan McKenzie play a big role in the number 2 spot in the rotation this year?
I would think so, and you know what? Someday, real soon, I think he might be a top of the rotation guy, an ace of his staff, because he really came on last year, and his performance in the postseason was excellent, and some of the biggest games down the stretch. He really took a big step forward, and I think, as much as anything else, consistency-wise, I mean, you could pretty much bank on a good, strong 6 innings from Tristan McKenzie, and that's that's front of the rotation stuff. If you can kind of plan your week around whether you're going to need to use the bullpen a lot or a little on a certain night where a guy's pitching, I think Tito knew that they could get 6 innings out of Tristan and have him be real quality innings.
Where is everything pitching-wise, whether it be rotation, bullpen? Where does Cleveland stand heading into spring training right now?
Well, I think it's safe to say that Shane Bieber would be your opening day starter, followed by Tristan McKenzie. Maybe Cal Quantrill's your number 2, but those two probably neck and neck for the second spot in the rotation. So whoever is not would be your 3rd guy. And then as it stands now, it should be Zach Plesac and Aaron Savali, and there are others chomping at the bit to make their debuts this season. At the end of the season, Double-A had their best pitching prospects, and there were several of them. So while they probably wouldn't be ready to start the year in Cleveland, if there are injuries or struggles, I think they wouldn't hesitate to go to the minor leagues to bring some of those guys
and
up.
Quite a pipeline through that as just pitchers developed over, let's just say, the last 3, 5, 10 years that have come through Cleveland.
And I think that's the key. When you look at how the Indians have to do it, the most expensive commodity, like in the NFL, it's your quarterback's going to make the most money. In Major League Baseball, your most expensive commodity is free agent pitching. I mean, look at Justin Verlander. He's on the other side of 40, and he's backing up the Brinks truck from the Mets this year to get paid. I think it's $40 million a year.
That sounds right.
And so we can't play that game. But if you develop your own, you have the Biebers, the Savalis, the McKenzies, and they're every bit as good. I think you could stack up the Guardians rotation against most in baseball and feel real good about how it stacks up 1 through 5.
I got a prelude of my own question to get to the next question, one of them that's handed to us. So far in the offseason, just a couple of moves. One was a little bit of a surprise to me. I know it's a short-term deal in Josh Bell, who I thought was too much of an afterthought nationally in the Juan Soto trade to the Padres, because Josh Bell's a good baseball player overall. So you get a 2-year, $33 million deal with him, and then Mike Zunino to come in as catcher. I guess talk about those signings, and then I'll ask the question that was asked here from one of our listeners out here.
Well, you go into the season, you come off a season where you have the youngest roster in all of baseball. Not only major leagues, but AAA too, which was fascinating. But so I think the tendency is, all right, they'll just get better as they go, and you can leave it alone. But you always have to figure out ways to get better. And the one area they were lacking last year offensively was power. So they signed a power-hitting first baseman, which is awesome. Bell's been a pretty consistent run producer in his career. He's a veteran on this team at the age of 30, which seems, I don't know if that seems young or old, but he would be, one of your elder statesmen. He's always been really good in the clubhouse in terms of leadership. So you bring in a lot of good stuff there. So that was a really nice signing. And Zunino, they needed a veteran catcher because they lost both of their catchers in the offseason to free agency to other clubs. But he's a veteran guy, handles the staff well, and when he's healthy has put up some pretty good numbers offensively. Last year he's coming off some injuries, so we'll see how that goes this year. But they feel confident that he can catch over 100 games, and if he can, they'll be in good shape. And
Cleveland was, how far in were they in the Murphy trade? How far did that advance? You don't think too much?
I don't know. And Chris or Mike in the front office, they're never going to tell you that because it just doesn't serve any purpose. But it sure sounded like they were, putting some decent deals out there, and then the Athletics just kept asking for more, and there was a point where they just weren't comfortable with what they had to give up to get him. But would Sean Murphy have been a nice fit here? Of course. But I think they're happy with what they got.
So that leads into a question from someone in our audience tonight. Do you see the team making any moves, trades, free agent signings yet this spring, or possibly waiting until the trade deadline, or wait and see, I guess, where they stand going to the deadline?
I don't know what it's going to be, but I feel like something's going to happen between now and the start of the season, whether it's before the start of spring training or maybe even the early stages of spring training. I don't think they're done with what they're going to do. They still haven't made a trade with all this young talent in the minor leagues. They have a stockpile of middle infielders, kind of a surplus there. I still feel like there's a trade somewhere in there. I just don't know what. So, yeah, I could see a trade happening.
Who's in a walk year at the end of this year? Who has expiring deals? I put you on the spot. I apologize.
It's okay. I mean, Ahmed Rosario's, he's at the end of his. Any of the guys who went to arbitration. Bieber still has 2 left, and that'll be a big one that bears watching. But Rosario would probably be the one that most noteworthy at this point.
This was part of, so we talked about Josh Bell. Give us a little background, on the feelings and signings of Josh Bell and Zunino. So we just kind of talked a little bit about that. Any other questions, just let us know, and we'll make sure Jim answers them for you. Anybody that's listening at home and has access to my number, text me. I had that happen a few years ago.
Can they drive down and drop off the questions?
Yeah, they could. Yeah. Especially if they're cruising on by the Winds on 15. Yeah, please do that.
Yeah, some chicken scratch on a notepad or something.
They can message us on Facebook, too.
What's that? Ooh. And message us on Facebook as well, too. Do they want Bo Naylor to back up at Cleveland or play every day at AAA?
That's going to be fascinating to watch in spring training, because I think in an ideal situation, they'd love for him to start at AAA. But I think we've seen nobody knew anything about Stephen Kwan, at least from the outside, heading into last season. and then he made the club on opening day. So catching's a little bit different because there's a lot going on, and Cleveland values pitch calling, defense above all else for their catchers, and then whatever they get offensively is gravy usually, but they'll give him a shot to win the job, but they definitely want him to develop, and if Zunito's ready to catch 5 days a week and Naylor only plays once a week, that might not serve him very well, especially at the start of the season. So as of right now, I could see him starting the year at AAA to kind of get going and then maybe see from there. But again, maybe he has a big spring, and the way the roster's lining up, it fits for him to be up in Cleveland.
Let's talk division. AL Central going into this year. Thoughts on that?
I'd rather not, because last year I wouldn't have had the Cleveland doing anything. And they ended up winning the division. But I'm guessing nationally, most people will say the Guardians, the White Sox, and the Twins would, again, be your three prime contenders. But after what happened with Cleveland last year, who's to say that this isn't the year that Kansas City finally breaks through again?
Managerial change there.
Yeah, and the Tigers, maybe this is the year their rebuild finally takes hold. Sometimes you just never know when that's going to hit. And so it's so hard to predict. But I think it's fair to say, if you look on paper, Cleveland, the White Sox, and Minnesota should be considered the favorites going in. And then you sit back and you watch them play the games and enjoy that.
So this isn't a Cleveland question, but a division question, because I know I've been following baseball since I was a kid, and I don't know that I've ever seen anything like what we just saw with Carlos Correa.
Yeah.
I mean, signed by two different teams, and then backing out because of physicals twice, and then finally ended up right where he started with Minnesota.
Is he still with the Twins?
He is.
As of right now?
Yes.
Okay.
As of should I update, check Twitter?
Yeah, I would refresh your phone. And that is fascinating, isn't it? But I think for the Twins, he went back. They know what they have. And I know there was a big deal about the physical he took in San Francisco, and then the Mets kind of got the same result, and they weren't comfortable with that. I think for the Twins, they know what they have. And obviously, medically, they know as much about him as anybody would, because he played for them last year. So I think there's a certain comfort level there where they feel they'll get enough games out of him to justify the contract they're giving him.
So just another baseball-related question. What's the general feel from your perspective around the game about the new owner, let's say the new Steve Cohen coming in with the New York Mets, which Mets fans are ecstatic over, because you're now referring to that last line of the taxes as the Steve Cohen tax. He's going to blow past everything, and he's hell-bent on making that team a winner and a perennial winner. What's the general feel in baseball on that way of doing it?
I think some people are apprehensive about it because they don't feel it's good for the game, especially for markets like Cleveland and Kansas City and some of the other smaller ones. But the Clevelands and Tampa Bays keep showing up in the postseason, and some smaller market teams continue to get there. And in fact, they went further than the Mets did a year ago. But you would think that with the amount of money spent, that eventually it will lead to a World Series title for them. But it just doesn't always work that way. I think where Cleveland equalizes things, they spend as much on their minor leagues and development as any team in baseball, and that works for them. So maybe it's where you're spending it, and there's no guarantee just because there's outspending everybody that they're going to win the World Series.
No, it is a crap. I'll tell you one person that you're glad isn't a member of the Guardians anymore, Trevor Bauer.
Yeah, that's true. He might not be a member of any team.
Yeah, I don't.
Anytime
Do you see
soon.
anybody signing him?
I don't, but there's always one team that breaks that mold in every sport, it seems like.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And look,
that's a terrible situation.
Yes.
Could you see, not necessarily this, but when he was with Cleveland, how much was the writing on the wall of what he was maybe in that clubhouse that wasn't a positive influence?
Well, I think they gave him a lot of leeway. And when he was here, it was interesting because he came in with a bad reputation from his time in Arizona. Patience, a lot of deep breaths, because he had his own way of doing things. But I will say this, the Guardians, we talk so much about development and that pitching machine. They picked his brain on some of his stuff, and they said, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing some of this stuff that's different from what everybody else does? And they implemented some of that stuff in the minor leagues, and now everybody does some of the things that he was doing. So from that standpoint, I think he was a benefit to this organization. I think it's fair to say he wore out his welcome by the end, and it was time when he was traded. But you don't see some of the things that he's run into since.
So Terry Francona back.
Yes.
That was exciting news.
Huge
news. Tell us a little bit more. Give us a sense on what that means to Cleveland going forward, especially with the group that they have right now and what he does.
It means everything. I mean, not that he needed to prove that he could win with a young roster last year, because he's proven he can win with just about anything. But I think there's still people who say, well, he won 2 World Series with Boston because he had push-button clubs. And that's not fair to him, because he has come in here and for 10 years this team has been relevant most of the seasons that he's been here. I think they've played about 1,500 games since he's been here, and I think 10 or 15 have been meaningless at the end of the year. That's unreal that there would be a week that doesn't mean anything at the end of a season. There's teams that are out of it by the All-Star break, and that's never been Cleveland while he's been here. So not only what he means on a day-to-day basis for the major league team, but what he means for the organization. He's in tune with what's going on in the minor leagues. Spring training, he loves spring training because there's coaches that come over from the minor leagues and spend a day in the dugout with the big club. He loves it when the young guys come over and get those innings late in the game in spring training, because he gets to know them. And sure enough, somebody's going to come up who was not on the radar right now, made an impression on him in spring training, and by the end of the year will be someone who can help them win a game. Maybe no more than one game, but it's because of how much he believes in player development and the minor leagues.
How different is it managing now than, let's just say 10 years ago?
Depending on where you are, a ton.
Yeah.
There's a lot of managers who, I don't know if their lineups are dictated, but there's a very strong influence of the front office on how the lineup should look on a day-to-day basis. Now, Tito gets suggestions from the analytics side, but he also has the freedom to say, look, I know you're saying this guy should hit third and play tonight, but this other guy, he's on a heater right now. He's really playing well. I want to ride him while he's hot, and I'm going to put him in there. Even though it's a left-handed batter on a left-handed pitcher, he still has that freedom to play, hunches and things like that. But he will use the information too, and I think that's the beauty. He's a pretty good blend of old school and then new school analytics.
Got to take a break, but I want to get your thoughts on something real quick, because this is a good question. I had this jotted down, and this is just an example. Thoughts on the new rules, the banning of the shift. Where do you stand on that? And then I guess part 2 of my question, they've been trying so many different things in the minor leagues, like robot umpires, and that's just another example. I guess, where do you see that going, and how quickly, if at all, coming to Major League Baseball? So start with a shift.
Before the break?
Before the break.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yep.
I think it'll be good in some ways. The negative, I thought the Guardians offensively last year, they were a throwback to where they used the whole field, put the ball in play. It wasn't the walk, strikeout, home run, 3 outcomes that you see so often in today's game. So they kind of played around shifts and made teams pay in a lot of cases if they were shifting on them. So I'll kind of miss that, taking that away. But from another standpoint, who's your favorite defensive shortstop with Cleveland in the last 20 years? Best defensive shortstop. Who? Omar Vizquel, easily. Why'd you like him? Spectacular. Every night could be a highlight, correct? He can make a highlight every night. In today's game with the shifts, those balls that he would go behind second to get, he'd already be there, and he would just stand there and pick it up and throw them out at first. And he'd be like, well, maybe he's a good defender, but we don't know. So this, I think, will bring back an emphasis on good athletic middle infielders. instead of a second baseman who maybe hits 30 home runs, but has the range of a manhole cover. You know, they're not moving, but because they don't need to.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to bring back, you know, the really good defensive players, and I think that's exciting as long as the ball's put in play a bunch.
Umpires, will we see that?
I hope not.
Yeah.
We might, though. I still like the human element of it, even if it's costly sometimes. There's some nights where the strike zone's a mess. But Tito got thrown out once this year, and since replay's been in play, the amount of managers who get ejected has dropped unbelievably so. And he got it. I forget what the circumstances were or who the umpire was, but they got into it big time. And he even said the next day, he's like, you know, I miss that. I miss being able to argue with umpires, because with the replay, who are you arguing with? There's no one to argue with. But so I'd hate to see them take that. They've taken a lot of the human element out of it, and maybe we should strive for perfection. I don't know, but the players aren't perfect, so I don't know. Should you expect the umpires to be too? Especially balls and strikes. I don't know. I don't like it.
More with Jim Rosenhaus from JJ Wins after this timeout here on B-Rock.
The Bryan Parks and Recreation Department would like to wish the Bryan Golden Bears good luck in tonight's game. The Bryan Parks and Rec offers a wide variety of classes for you during the entire year and an array of sporting events all year long. Check out what the Bryan Parks and Recreations Department has going on at bryanparksandrec.com or like them on Facebook. The Bryan Parks and Rec hopes to see you in one of the many parks that Bryan has to offer and enjoy the facilities. Questions about the classes or rental of one of their facilities, call 633-6030.
The Maddox Men's Emporium is the go-to place in Northwest Ohio for men's apparel and accessories, as well as specialty foods and barware. They feature items like cocktail bitters and drink mixers, cocktail smokers, barbecue sauces, hot sauces, and dry rubs, plus Bloody Mary mixes and margarita mixes. They also have game day items from some of your favorite Big Ten teams. And if you want the best men's apparel around, the Maddox has Task Bamboo Wear, Johnston and Murphy Clothing and shoes, Liverpool jeans, Devil Dog, FX Fusion, Jeep brand, and more. If you haven't been to the Maddox Men's Emporium yet, then stop by at 123 South Main Street in downtown Bryan and see what you've been missing.
When it comes to choosing a memorial that represents the lasting memories of a person's life, the Fackler Monument Company in Montpelier, Ohio can create exactly what you are looking for, like an eagle soaring through the woods etched on a memorial, a bench that has mom and dad's names engraved into the granite to sit and reflect, a picture of the family farm etched on the stone, or maybe your style is a memorial that has a split headstone with a vase in between for flowers. The Fackler Monument Company of Montpelier, Ohio, serving families in the tri-state area since 1924.
It's game time, fellas. Time to step onto the field and make the biggest pitch of your life. You're going to ask the biggest question of your life to the most beautiful woman you've ever met. Hi, I'm Scott Stambaugh from Stambaugh Jewelers in downtown Defiance, and we're going to help you make that pitch with a diamond that's a real heater. And when you lay it out there in front of her, she won't be able to lay off it. She'll take a mighty swing and grab that diamond right out of your hand. Then you hear screams, cheers, and a beautiful yes. Visit Stambaugh Jewelers or shop online at stambaughjewelers.com. Then into your windup, and yes, baby.
For over 42 years, Cornerstone's Flooring Outlet in Pioneer, Ohio has provided the tri-state area with the best service and lowest prices on the highest quality flooring options available. Luxurious carpet, durable sheet vinyl, easy to install, click or glue down, luxury vinyl, plank or tile, carpet tile, laminate, hardwood, ceramic or porcelain tile. Over 1,000 carpet and vinyl remnants at both locations. Hundreds of area rugs starting at only $29 each. The list goes on and on for both commercial and residential customers, all at prices to fit any budget. Need a professional installer to handle that flooring project? No problem. One of our crews will do all the work for you, including measuring and providing a down-to-the-penny price before we start. Doing it yourself to save money? No problem. We'll explain how. Visit Cornerstone's Flooring Outlet in Pioneer for all of your flooring needs. Open weekdays 9 to 6, Saturdays 9 to noon. Welcome back to JJ Wins in Holiday City. Got about 15-20 minutes left in the program. Jim, from our audience, can Will Bannon become a Stephen Kwan?
Will Brennan.
Will Brennan.
Maybe. I mean, kind of similar hitter, maybe a little more power, but unbelievable season. It's funny. obviously, Hammy, we follow the minor leagues. I mean, Hammy he wanted him up here in July because of the year. Like every year, we get every day the reports from the minor leagues on what happened the night before. And this kid's getting 2-3 hits a game, doubles, not necessarily a whole lot of home runs, but playing a decent outfield. And they finally did get him up here and started several playoff games. So they're very high on him. Where does he play? That'll be the interesting part, because your outfield now, this time a year ago, the outfield was up for grabs. But now you figure Gonzalez in right, Straw in center, and Kwan in left, you're set. But Brennan could certainly be a real good fourth outfielder to start and then see where it goes from there. But he's an exciting young hitter. He really is. Doesn't strike out much, makes good solid contact.
Thoughts on the extra innings rule, runner starting on second?
When they first came out with it, I was like, how could they do that? It's baseball. They're not supposed to do stuff like that. But I love it. I don't know how everyone feels, but it's like you get to extra innings, and all of a sudden there's this urgency to score a run if you're the visiting team and get on that scoreboard, because you don't know if you're going to have another extra inning to go to. Do you bunt the runner over to try and just score one run, or do you really need 2 runs if you're on the road?
Bunting
every once in a while. So I love it. And then sure enough, postseason, there's a 15-inning game where they just couldn't score, and if they had the runner at second in the postseason, that game probably would have been over a lot earlier, but it turned out to be a classic. So I like it, and I think especially in the regular season, the amount of games that go 15, 16 innings where you just destroy your bullpen are few and far between now, and I think that's important.
What was it? Did you enjoy when we did it because of COVID? Did you enjoy the 7-inning doubleheaders?
I did. Kind of for the same reason. You'd get to the 5th inning, it's like, whew, this is the late innings. We can start thinking about closers coming in and that type of thing. But I get it. Like, I think from a fan standpoint, especially with the split doubleheaders, they're playing 7-inning games. Fans are like, wait a minute, I bought a ticket for a 9-inning game. What's going on?
Yeah.
So I think from that standpoint, you got to keep that integrity. So I think it served its purpose during COVID, but I think it's good to get back to the 9-inning game.
So one area we wanted to touch on that maybe some aren't aware of or don't know much about yet, some big changes are coming to Progressive Field. I guess talk a little bit about those and maybe some of your thoughts on, and this is not going to be done in one big swoop.
They won't even start construction until November of next year, if the season runs long enough. They're going to start right after the final out. So hopefully that's at the end of the World Series. So everything will be done, they're hoping, by the start of the 2025 season. From a fan standpoint, the biggest change they made in 2015, which at the time was unique, was the corner bar area where they're selling tickets, standing room tickets. You don't get your own seat, but you can move around throughout the ballpark. And then I think the way fans enjoy games, in a lot of cases, not everybody, but a lot of younger fans, they don't want to just come to the game and have to sit in one seat and score the game or anything like that. They're moving around. They're looking for friends. Hey, I got a buddy out in left field. I'm going to go visit him for a couple innings, have a beer or two. There'll be more of those types of areas that you see in right field in the corner bar area. They're going to do a couple of those in the upper deck, another one behind home plate, and I think it's really going to sharpen up the ballpark. There's some wasted space in the upper deck for sure right now.
The terrace hub's going to look a little bit different.
It will.
Yeah.
It will. Same thing, just more freedom to move around. Buy a ticket. You're buying a ticket without a seat, which 20 years ago people were like, what do you mean you're buying a ticket without a seat? But that's what they're doing now, and it's working. I mean, Friday nights you cannot move out in the corner bar area, and it makes for a really fun environment.
How would you say, with the way how did crowds progress as the year went on, and like these guys are for real? Because it's tough. I mean, we're doing 6-10 starts in April and May for a reason, because you want some fans and cheeks in the seats there and get some of the school kids out and all of that. Did it get better? Did they start to buy in? You mentioned just Friday nights, but how did attendance go the rest of the way?
It did get better, but, I mean, look, in fairness, there were no expectations for this team. There was very little buzz about the ball club going into last season, and then there was a strike. This time a year ago, are you buying a ticket for a game in July if you don't even know there's going to be a season? So it was impossible to sell tickets until they settled in early March. And then when they settled, no one knew the team was going to be what it was. So it took a long time to get that momentum rolling. It's been real steady this offseason, so I think you'll see a nice bump in attendance this year.
And a sports town to begin with. I mean, they know very loyal. So we're seeing this with the Cavs now, having a heck of a winter and season. And didn't happen for the Browns, but still, Cleveland, a terrific sports town overall.
It really is, and I think we saw that in October. The crowds were awesome in the 2 playoff series, and they saw some great games. But it really was wild, and it's fun when you talk to broadcasters from the other teams and you get done with a game and they just say it's one of their favorite places to come to when it's full because it's so loud. Andy, no lie, when Gonzalez hit the home run to win the second wild card game against Tampa Bay, the booth was shaking because everyone's jumping up and down above in the upper deck. It literally shakes when it's going that good. So it is a fun place to watch a game.
Prospects, we mentioned, so MLB Pipeline just came out with a prospect update. I know there's 2 pitchers from Cleveland in the top 10, if you want to touch on them, and maybe anybody else maybe to keep an eye on, or as they're advancing their way through the Cleveland system.
Well, I think from a pitching standpoint, there's 3 guys who you can keep an eye on. Daniel Espino, going into the season last year, hard-throwing right-hander, was at the top of that list, but he spent a lot of the season on the injured list last year with a knee issue. So they'll take him very slow. He was at AA, but he'll progress slowly because of the injury. They want to be really careful. Gavin Williams, big right-hander, former #1 draft pick, finished his year at AA last year. And, I mean, he's a big physical kid, throws hard, and they're excited to see what he can do when he finally gets here. And Tanner Bybee, who was not drafted as high, but they took a chance on, made some tweaks to his delivery, and his velocity has shot up since he's been in the system, and now he's on the radar too. So that's 3 arms names to keep in mind if they need some starting pitching.
Is there a type that they look for, the front office? I mean, as far as pitching, is it more college, more high school, power arms, or kind of a little bit of everything? Because every organization has different philosophy.
You know what? It seems like they really try and take a look at, and it trends more toward college arms because they're a little more mature, but they look for strike throwers. And maybe it's the Shane Bieber effect, because it's sometimes, you get a hard thrower who's all over the place, and a lot of teams will say, well, we'll get him to throw strikes. You can't teach velocity. But sometimes it just never clicks in for a guy to throw strikes. But if he can already throw strikes, they feel that they have some components in place that can help pitchers increase their velocity, whether it's through the weight training and flexibility or delivery, the way they'll break down deliveries with these high-speed cameras that can slow it down frame by frame to really analyze a pitcher's delivery to get the most out of his delivery. And all of a sudden, these guys can throw strikes, and now they're starting to throw 10 miles an hour faster than they did in college. Then you have a prospect all of a sudden. So they lean more toward the command. If they can throw strikes, that jumps out right away. They feel they can increase the velocity.
Well, that's interesting. Because like you said, every organization's a little bit different. They love those young, lively high school arms, and then it translates into something down the road as well. What's your upcoming schedule look like here? When do we leave for spring training? When do you head out to Arizona?
Late February. The first broadcast, February 25th, a Saturday against the Reds. The exhibition season starts. Things are getting started a little bit earlier this year because the World Baseball Classic is back. So for players participating
How many Cleveland players are in that off the top of your head?
They're still trying to figure it out. Because like Jose Ramirez would play for the Dominican Republic, but he's coming off thumb surgery. Depends if he's ready to go or not, and they don't want him rushing it just to get there. So
I think that's a great event. I think that's a neat event to
really
throw in
fun.
the way they do that and how often that they do it. I think it's going to be a fun March because it's in basically 3 weeks in March.
Mm-hmm. There's a regional in Phoenix, and the last time they had it, there was one there, and I went to, I think it was Canada, Mexico, and I mean the Mexican fans were off the charts fun. With maracas and all that kind of stuff during the game. So it's different from what we're used to.
And that does change your spring training a little bit if you have guys, even if you have guys there or you don't have guys there, because other teams will have playing.
And I think every manager's nervous about the pitching. They don't want their pitchers who might not be ready yet to be competing at that level. So they'll bring them in a little bit early to give them a head start so that they can compete at a pretty high level when they play in the WBC. But I know part of the spring training schedule, and it will be a radio game, the Guardians will play Team Mexico because they're training in the Goodyear area. So that'll be fun.
I did see, it just peaked opening day, late March, with the 29th or 30th, and you're out west.
30th at Seattle, 4 in Seattle, 3 in Oakland to start the season. So hopefully that extra week before coming home gives us a shot.
Is Oakland as bad as it's been? Or worse, the stadium, the whole area?
Yeah, the stadium's a mess.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why they're maybe leaving that.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny that the playing surface is beautiful, and now that the Raiders aren't there, it's perfect. But it's an old stadium, and they haven't put a whole lot of money into it. So it seems like they're at the tipping point of, look, if you can't get a deal done here, we got to move. And it sure seems like Las Vegas is the destination. So they may lose the Raiders and the Athletics to the same city.
And that's a tough, I mean, you're starting out west, and you start with one of the real pleasant surprises in baseball, along with Cleveland last year, was the job that Seattle did.
Yeah, they came on, and the Guardians got a good look at them at the end of the year when they were hot. They'll play them. It's funny how the schedule works. There's always some quirks. They play Seattle to start the season out there. And then the first home series is against the Mariners, so they'll be done with the Mariners 10 games into the season.
How do you think the balanced schedule is going to – that's another change to the game where you play everybody in Major League Baseball. How do you think that's going to be? Do you like that?
I think it's good. If nothing else, it decreases the amount of games you play in the division, which may make it harder for the Guardians because the Central has been kind of top-heavy, and then the bottom feeders, you've been kind of able to beat up on them, and it's helped for the wild card situation for teams. But I think it'll be good. And I think from a fan standpoint, now they'll get to see National League teams every other year come into town. So the Dodgers, the teams like the Cardinals, will have to put up with their visit. But it'll be fun seeing teams on a more regular basis from the National League instead of, it was kind of haphazard where I think this year we went to San Diego for the first time since the 05 season, which didn't seem to make sense. But now we'll see them on a regular basis.
It goes from, 19 to 15
14.
or 13? 14 divisional games now. Yeah, it is going to be different.
I think it's good.
I do, too.
Yeah.
I like that balance. Hey, Jim, we always appreciate you coming and being on with us. Thank you so much. Any Cleveland fans that are here, don't leave. Stop on up. Jim has a few goodies from the goodie bag that he'd like some Cleveland people to go home with tonight. Thanks to all the Cleveland fans that came out tonight. We certainly appreciate that, and others, and appreciate you coming all these years.
Great to be back. Missed it the last couple of years. Didn't seem the same going to spring training and not doing the tour of Ohio and stopping here as one
and
of
Guardians
the
Fest this weekend. If they have some spare time, go to Cleveland.
Saturday, great day. I think the weather's supposed to be decent. The Huntington Convention Center is the site, and it's an awesome event. It's a huge venue. There's stage shows where we have discussions with managers and players and things like that. The highlight for me, though, is there's a huge wiffle ball field that they put in the middle of the convention center, and our players play like 6- and 7-year-olds, and you can sign up if you're a kid showing up. You can get in that game.
Cool.
The last time they did it, and it's been a couple of years for that too, but I think Tristan McKenzie threw 100 innings that day because he just kept playing. He didn't want to stop, and nobody was stopping him, and the kids had a ball. So it really is a fun time. So if you have a chance, head on down to Cleveland and enjoy the day on Saturday.
Thanks for being with us, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jim Rosenhaus from the Cleveland Guardians Radio Network, our guest here tonight. Sports Weekly brought to you by Terry Hendricks Ford, J.J. Wins, the Bryan Parks and Rec Department, Fackler Monument Company, the main stops of Northwest Ohio, Amerimaid Realty, Andres O'Neill & Lowe, Elianne's Boutique in the Maddox Men's Emporium, Stambaugh Jewelers, and Cornerstone Flooring. Back to our normal Wednesday next week here on Sports Weekly. More rock on the way after this final break here on B-Rock.